Probably heard the news about the big NAR settlement. National Association of Realtors had a big settlement last week where basically the face of real estate is going to change a lot as we head throughout the year. But are some of the headlines you're seeing correct? 6% commissions dead. Real estate prices are going to be crashing. Buyers agents are going away. We've heard it all. We've sifted through it, which is what we should do. Looked at all the details. We're going to provide you with an update on what happened, what happens next, and most importantly for you, buyers or sellers, how's this going to change real estate going forward? Hey everybody, this is Steve, real estate agent, Malone Home Team, EXP in the North Atlanta area. If you would not mind, like the video, subscribe if you don't mind as well. I'll get us out in front of more people in YouTube, especially when we're sharing stuff like this, because this is a pretty pressing matter that everybody's been talking about. And everybody's been talking about it, and one of the main reasons why everybody's been talking about it, and I hate to say it, we get a lot of false headlines, a lot of false information from those headlines. And we've been kind of weeding through it all week here, talking to our folks at EXP, talking to some of the folks in our network here in the North Atlanta area, trying to figure out, A, what does it mean for real estate agents? But for the purposes of this video, I really want this to be more client-facing, more of a what does this mean for everybody else as we go forward. If you're looking to buy a house or looking to sell a house, what does this mean going forward? Because things are going to change a little bit. And at the same time, things are going to be exactly the same as they were. What does that mean? We're going to break it all down. So in this video, I'm going to try and go as quickly as possible because I don't want to get bogged down. I want this to be informative. I want this to be entertaining. I'll do my best with what I've got here with that. But I want to tell you what happened. Okay, what was the settlement about? B, what are the new rules going to be? And C, what does that mean for buyers and sellers going forward? And D, what are my thoughts on what's going to happen next? Okay, so again, not going to get bogged down in the weeds, but a lot of stuff to talk about. Going to go through the headlines, okay? Past the headlines, because unfortunately in this culture, headlines get clicks and whatever. Let's talk about what actually happened. So let's break it down. The NAR settlement and what it means for real estate going forward. Here we go. So what happened last Friday was, and we're recording this on the 22nd, so this is on the 15th, the National Association of Realtors had a settlement in a commission lawsuit. And actually, there's a bunch of commission lawsuits. There was a big one that happened late last year where some sellers, I should say, sued the National Association of Realtors as well as a bunch of other real estate companies because there was a lack of transparency in commissions. There was potentially collusion in commissions, things like that. It was a pretty weak case when you talk to some of the lawyers, hear some of the lawyers talking about it, but for some reason, it still was found for the plaintiff. Now, a lot of the same people were saying that if that was appealed, which it was going to be, more than likely it was going to be overturned in a higher court. But that being said, those appeals take potentially years, cost potentially a lot of money, and there's no guarantees it was going to be overturned. Okay, so that being said, what NAR decided to do was we're going to settle. A lot of the brokerages are doing the same thing. They're just settling and getting out of it, being done, and getting back to work, which is what happens in a lot of these class action lawsuits anyway. The people just like, I don't want to deal with this. Here's some money. Let's just move on. Okay, so that's what happened. Now, the difference between what NAR did and what some of the other companies did was the National Association of Realtors, they're changing some of their guidelines, changing some of the ways that they do business going forward, and that is what kind of got the headlines going. Now, the end of 6% commission, the home prices are going to come crashing, all that stuff. Yes, that I hate to say that's a lot of clickbait. Okay, let's talk about. All right, so that's what happened last Friday. It was a big moment because it's something that everybody's been expecting and planning, whatever. And then when it dropped, I think everybody was caught off guard, especially people who aren't in real estate. People in real estate kind of knew it was coming, kind of knew what to expect, kind of knew how the dominoes were going to fall. Once they started falling, I think everybody freaked out outside of the world of real estate. So that was their knee-jerk reaction. So that's what happened. That's number one. Number two, let's talk about what the new rules are going to be going forward. Going forward from here, here's going to be the big change, okay? Because the problem is, and every state does it a little bit different. Georgia was actually pretty smart about how they did it. Georgia, if you've ever sold a house in Georgia and you've signed a listing agreement, what you see is there are two boxes on there. One box says this is the total commission I'm offering to the listing agent. That number can be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever it is. Okay, there's no hard and fast rule of what that number should be. All right, that's a negotiated thing, and it's always negotiable. So let's say that that number is X. Okay, that is what the seller is willing to give to the selling agent, the listing agent, to say, I need you to sell my house. I'm willing to give you X%. That listing agent says, all right, I'm going to split that. I'm going to give, let's call it X divided by 2. I'm going to give half of that to a cooperating buyer's agent. And it says it on the contract. Cooperating buyer's agents will get the X divided by 2, or whatever the number ends up being, okay, whatever the percentage is. So it's in there in the state of Georgia. Some states, it didn't necessarily have it laid out like that. It just said X% and that was it. And some people didn't. So that's a great thing about being in Georgia, is that a lot of that stuff is already kind of baked in. We already knew that. But going forward, what's going to change is, instead of saying, I'm going to pay the listing agent X, and then with that, he can give the buyer's agent X divided by 2, there's going to be 2 different places where you're going to sign. One's going to say, I'm going to give the listing agent X, and if I want to give a commission to a buyer's agent, I'm willing to give them either X or Y or Z or whatever, okay? That's how it's going to be going forward. In a lot of ways, it's the same thing, because everything was negotiable. And we explained to all of our sellers that the reason why we offer money to a buyer's agent is there is one of me, okay? There's 70,000 agents in the metro Atlanta area, okay? In any given area, let's say like 5,000 to 10,000 people are around your house, okay? So I want to reach out to those 5,000 to 10,000 people, and I want to use that commission as the bait, let's call it, to bring the agents in. Because if I'm working by myself, trying to work by myself to try and find somebody, I'm not going to be able to find as many buyers as if I were to employ everybody. Now, that's number one. Number two, if I am asked to do all that, and then when I bring somebody in, run all the extra stuff, it's going to be more than X now. It's going to be X plus 1 or X plus 2 or Y or whatever it is. It's going to be higher than X, because now the listing agent is going to be doing all the work anyway. Okay. Again, this is all stuff that was negotiable. Now it's just a little bit more transparent, and we're kind of forcing the conversations now so that everybody kind of knows that we're all on the same page. Because people, when you sell your house, you only sell your house like once every 10 years on average. People move like once every 10, once every 11 years now. It used to be every 5 or 6 years. So people don't 100% understand. And real estate agents, like us, we sell 20 to 30 houses a year. I mean, we're doing this all the time. So, we obviously are more versed on it than the average person. So we're just trying to, National Association of Realtors, to their credit, what they're trying to do is they're trying to say, going forward, everything is going to be super duper transparent. Everything is going to be super on the table. Everybody's going to know everything going forward, which is great, because it's going to increase the professionalism in the business. It's going to increase the transparency. Everybody's going to know what's going on. Okay, so that's the big change that you're going to see. Well, that's one of the big changes. The second one is they may mandate a rule. Now, they're talking about it. I don't know how it's going to work out. But at this point, in the state of Georgia, if I'm working with a buyer and we're putting an offer in, I have to have something signed called a buyer brokerage agreement. Okay, buyer brokerage agreement is basically like if you're selling a house, you sign a listing agreement saying, I'm hiring this realtor to work for me. Buyer brokerage agreement is the same thing. I'm hiring this realtor to work for me. Okay, that has to be signed before we put an offer in. Okay, technically, or in reality, it should be signed in the very beginning. But sometimes agents don't necessarily push for that or whatever. And sometimes I'll be honest, if I'm working with somebody, I may not get a buyer brokerage agreement signed right away, especially if they're family or friends, because we're working together. And then we'll get it signed when we need to get it signed. But what happens is sometimes if somebody calls off the internet, let's say they go on Zillow, let's say, and they see a house and they call an agent and say, hey, I want to go see 123 Main Street. It used to be that they'd meet you out there 123 Main Street, and then once it was over, then it's like, all right, now I showed you a house. My name's Steve. I'd love to work with you. Blah blah blah. That's a way for agents to get business. Okay. Going forward, what's going to happen is before we go in that house, I think that this is going to be the rules going forward because of the way that representation is changing. If you want to go see a house, you got to sign something. Even if it's just a one-time showing thing, you have to have some kind of representation going into a house, okay? And so I think what agents are going to do is they're going to have people, you may show a house once with that one-time representation, but then it's going to force buyers agents to do a better job of, talking about what's my value proposition, things like that. So let's get back. We'll get into that coming up. So we talked about first what happened. The second thing, we talked about the nuance and the machine changing. What's going to change the machine? Now, let's talk about what's really going to happen if you're selling your house or buying your house. We'll start with sellers. If you were selling your house, as we talked about, not a lot changes. The big change is going to be, instead of saying, I'll pay the listing agent X, and then he can give the buyer's agent X divided by 2 or whatever the number is, what can happen is now I have to sign two things. X for the listing agent, and if I'm willing to give a concession to a buyer's agent, is X divided by 2 or X or Y or whatever. It's two separate places, okay? It's going to be separated. And what I'm going to say is, I think that a lot of people, the knee-jerk reaction from what we've heard from a lot of buyers and a lot of sellers this week that are under contract, okay? Pause, time out. Right now, if you are under contract right now, nothing has changed. It's a contract. You are under contract going forward. We cannot redo the contract going forward based on all this new stuff that's happening. That doesn't necessarily go into effect until mid-July anyway. Okay, so that's not going to change anything. Nationwide, we have seen, I've seen dozens at least of people who've said that their people have called them and said, cancel the deal. We want our money back and blah blah blah. And it's like, it's as of this moment. Again, Friday, March 12th. Doing this 11 o'clock in the morning. Okay, you can see the clock behind me. 11 o'clock in the morning. Okay, it hasn't been approved yet. That's the other thing. The NAR settlement has to be approved before everything can go forward anyway. Okay, so this is probably going to be the NAR rules going forward, whether they take the settlement or not, just because NAR wants to be sure everything is done correctly, so all this doesn't happen again. So that being said, if you're under contract and everything like that, you can't undo the contract that you're under right now. If you're under contract in escrow on your way to closing. Okay, that back. All right, now, selling your house, listing your house. You have the choice, do I want to pay a buyer's agent as well? And like I said earlier, there's 70,000 agents in Atlanta, 5 to 10,000 of them around your house. I want to employ all of them, okay? Think back to the pandemic, okay? Pandemic was super crazy. People were getting $60,000, $70,000, $100,000 over asking price. Why? Because there was a massive, massive imbalance in buyers to sellers. Not a lot of homes, a boatload of buyers. Okay, I kept that pretty clean. So that's why houses went way over. Okay, you had that imbalance. That's how you get above asking price. That's how you get great deals and whatever, is to create that imbalance. Best way to do that is to hire a buyer's agent. Even if you pay, let's say, just to give a number, offer $5,000. Even if you offer $5,000, offering $5,000 will net you above $5,000 because you're going to bring in a lot more buyers. Okay, so that's going to be our argument. Now, going forward, the other thing is if you don't want to give to a buyer's agent, the listing agent now, if they bring somebody in that is not represented or whatever and doesn't want to pay, we have more work to do, so we're going to raise our rates. So instead of paying X, like I said, it's going to be X plus 1, maybe X plus 2, whatever it is. Each agent does things the way that they want to do it. They run their business the way they want to do it. We're still kind of crunching numbers here to see what makes the most sense for us and how we're going to run our business. And every agent's going to do that. Everything's going to be negotiable. Everything's going to be on the table. But our message to all of our sellers is going to be, to get the best deal, you probably want to hire a buyer's agent or provide a compensation for a buyer's agent. That's going to be our push. But the reality is, for sellers, not a whole lot's going to change. The big changes with this will be with the buyers. All right, so buyers, like we talked about, there's going to be, and I don't know what the rule's going to be, but there's going to be the push that you cannot see a house without some kind of representation. Now, I don't know what that's going to mean for open houses. Again, a lot of this is stuff that we're going to build with NAR, with our local boards, things like that, with our local EXP brokers. These are things that we're going to build over the next 3 to 4 months to to be ready for July. I mean, we're not going to wait till July to pivot. We're starting to pivot now, right? So, what is that going to mean for open houses? I don't know. There's probably going to be something that says that if you want to come and check out this open house, I need you to sign here. Like we always have people sign in, if they come in, this and that. But I think going forward, we ask people to sign in. Sometimes people don't sign in, and I understand people don't want to give out their names and numbers and whatever at open houses. I get that. Not going to be the case anymore. If you want to see the open house, I need your name, I need your number, I need your email, I need you to sign here because we need to have some kind of document or some kind of representation or something that says that I'm coming in unrepresented. If I'm coming in unrepresented, maybe I'm technically represented as a customer of the listing agent, okay? Or however it's going to be. I don't know what it's going to look like. But the days of just walking in an open house just willy-nilly without having to sign anything, I think those days are going to be over once we get closer to July. And I think that the biggest issue and my biggest concern with this is, or what's going to happen is a lot of buyers they're going to have the conversation ahead of time. We always have a conversation with our buyers. We call it a buyer strategy session, where we talk about this is how the buying process works. This is how we approach it. This is what you need to do. We talk about wire fraud. We talk about all the stuff. Talk a little bit about what are you looking for in a house, so we can have an idea of what are we looking for together, things like that. We have that conversation ahead of time, right? So you're just going to have that conversation. Now, part of that conversation is and this is how it used to be, and it's going to have to be very much so going forward. I'll tell you why. Part of the conversation we have is, if we go to a house that for some crazy reason offers 0 commission, whether it's a for sale by owner or it's a new construction place that has some kind of bylaws that says we can't pay a buyer's agent or whatever, if we go into a situation where we're not getting paid a commission at closing from the proceeds, I'm going to need you to pay our commission out of pocket at closing. Okay, so it's going to be another line item at closing. It's either a line item on the one side or the other. I'd rather be on the seller's side, so that way that's less money you have to front up front. Okay, but we have to get paid somehow. Okay, because I love my people, but I gotta feed them kids. I got 7 kids, and they all want to eat, especially the big ones. Good Lord. Anyway, but that's going to change a lot. I think the first couple months are going to be a little bit of the wild, wild west, because I think a lot of sellers are going to try this out and see, I'm not going to pay a buyer's agent, let's see what happens. And if that's the case, talking to buyers, we're going to talk to them and say, look, seriously, going forward, we need to make at least X percent or Y percent or whatever it's going to be. Okay, that again, totally negotiable. Now that's negotiable between the buyer's agent and the buyers, right? I think that's going to squeeze some of the first-time home buyers. I think it's going to squeeze some of the FHA buyers, the VA buyers, low-income buyers, the buyers that we really want to get into home ownership, the buyers that we really want to, help out. I think sometimes things are designed to help people out, and they exclude them. I mean, I've seen countless TikToks and Instagram reels and videos and whatever from some of the more famous developers or some of the more famous, people picking up rentals, things like that, saying, dude, whatever the rules are, if I need to pay you 3%, I'll pay you 3%. I'll pay you 2%. I'll pay you whatever, right? That's what they're all saying on these videos. So I think the people that are buying these as investments and whatever, I think that they get a higher hand potentially in some of these deals. It kind of stinks. I think the little person gets squeezed again. And again, it's one of the situations where we're trying to help the little guy out, and the little guy gets squeezed. Just another instance of it, but that's my opinion. We'll see what that works out. So those are going to be the big changes. Okay, the big changes are you're going to have some kind of representation when you see a house, even an open house. And the other big change is, I think there's going to be more houses that don't offer compensation, and if that's the case, you're going to have to pay out of pocket at closing the buyer's agent. And what that's going to mean, unfortunately, is a lot of buyers, first-time home buyers, the low-income buyers that we were talking about, those folks they may just forego representation and just buy a house without an agent. That's a terrible idea. Okay, so let's talk about that. Why should you not do that? Why should you not buy a house without an agent? So when I first started real estate, I was in a training class, and they were talking about buyer's agents. And they were talking about the importance of signing what's called a buyer brokerage agreement. We talked about earlier, BBA. That in the state of Georgia is my permission to legally haggle on your behalf if you're a buyer, okay? And legally put in offers, things like that. And somebody basically, one of the instructors, and this has always stuck with me, and I'll drop this on you. If Mr. Buyer or Mrs. Buyer, if we went into a house and the house was listed at $400,000, let's say, and I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that house is way overpriced, would you want me to tell you? Now, if we're in the house and I see a major defect with the house, major, that you probably haven't seen, but me being a real estate agent for 7 years now, I've seen this several times and I know it's a major issue. Would you want me to tell you? And finally, if you wanted to write a contract and I knew of something you needed to ask for in the contract, a stipulation that you absolutely needed to ask for, or it was going to cost you thousands of dollars down the road, would you want me to give you that stipulation that you should ask for? So if you answered yes to any of those three, it's exactly why we have to sign a buyer brokerage agreement. Because in the state of Georgia, and maybe in some other states too, but in the state of Georgia, if we don't have anything signed, technically, because I'm a realtor, because I'm a member of NAR, member of NAMAR, I'm a member of FMLS, whatever, if I haven't signed with you on a technicality, I work for the seller. And I can't work for the seller and tell you all the problems with the house, or tell you how you should, that the price is too high. I'm not allowed to have an opinion on the house unless we work together on technicality. And with all the Amazon echoes in the world now, and everybody listening to everybody, I got a seller right now who, she called me last night, and they have a baby monitor that's Wi-Fi. So they are listening to the baby monitors, people going through their house because they're selling their house. And she's telling, this person said this person said that. So they're listening to everything everybody's saying, right? If I say something about a house and we don't have a BBA, now I don't know how they would catch me or whatever, but if I say something about a house, like, yeah, this house has major issues, it has this, it has that, blah, 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 and we don't have anything signed, technicality, I could be in deep doo-doo with the Realtor Board in Georgia, okay? Because I don't represent the buyer, I represent the seller until something's signed. Once something's signed, then all bets are off. I'll beat that house up like crazy. So that's why you want to have an agent. You want to have somebody who's been in, like for us, we've been in 7 years. There's some really great buyer's agents. I work with some really great buyer's agents who have bought some of our listings. I work with some awful buyer's agents that bought some of our listings, okay? So there's really good ones and there's really awful ones, okay? You're looking for an agent who has been in the war. They've had issues that they've negotiated. They've negotiated after inspections. They've seen it all. And they're going to be there in your corner to help you not make major mistakes, okay? I tell all my people all the time when we're having these buyer brokerage meetings, there's this chance that these people may not pay my commission. I'm going to need you to pay my commission, okay? And I don't want that, okay? Now, on technicality, you're paying my commission because the price is slightly inflated on the back end because they're paying a buyer's agent, but it comes off of their side of the ledger, not your side of the ledger, right? So I don't want you coming out of pocket paying my commission. I want it coming on their side because I want you to worry about down payment and closing costs, right? So that's what I talk to my people all the time. I would rather be in that position, okay? But that being said, if it happens, we're going to give you world-class service. I'm going to kick butt for you. We're going to kick butt. Get it done. We're worth every penny. Every penny. I can say that straight-faced, look them right in the eye and say, if you hire me for X, it is well worth your while because I'm going to save you that and more by being sure you are not buying a lemon, being sure you're buying the right house. So there you go. So that's a little bit about the dangers that I worry about. The biggest pitfall, I think, from this whole thing is I think some buyers are going to get squeezed, okay? And I don't want you getting squeezed. Talk to an agent. Let's see how it all plays out. over these next couple months. So, final thoughts. In closing on this one, those are the changes. Okay, it's not the astronomical changes that I think a lot of people made out last Friday and Saturday. It was a knee-jerk reaction. I think that a lot of people fed off of headlines, which fed off of headlines, which fed off of headlines, and everything got out ahead of it. And I think people saw the headlines and didn't read the story. Okay, it really took realtors a couple of days to kind of figure out, all right, peel back all the onions, peel back whatever, and what really happened. Okay, is this going to be a big change? It's going to be a pretty big change. Is it going to be like massive? Is it going to be like a total? No, I don't think so, because I still think that sellers are still going to pay for a buyer's agent. But I think that the selling agent or the listing agent really needs to talk to the sellers about the value of offering a compensation for a buyer's agent. Okay, if you do that, you're going to do better. Okay, and it's going to force listing agents to explain the value of that, which I think is good for listing agents, because you want to have pros, and the pros can explain it, and you want to have sellers who know what's going on, and sellers are going to get the best deal possible, and I still think that's the best deal. On the other side, you're going to get buyers who they're going to get representation. Okay, unless there's buyers who don't want the representation, and I feel bad for them. I really think you should have representation, because if you write a contract by yourself or whatever, it's just like going into a court of law. Okay, you don't want to go into a court of law if somebody charges you something, whatever, and not have a lawyer. Okay, you want to have representation. You don't want to represent yourself. Okay, buying a house is the same thing. I mean, it's the biggest financial transaction you'll probably make in your life. You don't want to go it alone and risk a major headache, because there are some major headaches. We help people through stuff all the time. Okay, so that's kind of what that's the thought process going forward. Those are the changes going forward. I think it's going to force agents to have more conversations. It's going to force sellers to ask more questions. It's going to force buyers to sit down with agents and ask more questions. I think there's going to be more collaboration between agents and their clients, which is good. I think there's going to be more transparency, which is good. I think right now, unfortunately, and talking to you may have seen the video, I interviewed my business partner, Stacy Wyatt, about this, and he talked about, maybe NAR did not have a very good press release about this. They did not do a good PR coverage after this to really explain what happened. I think they kind of let that it happen, and they kind of turned their back and kind of let the press do what they were going to do. I think that over the next couple of months, as the dust settles and everybody realizes what's going on, I think everybody's going to be like, all right, this kind of makes sense. And this is probably how it should be done, right? So you're going to have agents being much more professional, sellers being much more in tune, buyers being much more in tune. I think on the whole, it's going to make it for a better industry. I'm all for it. So let's roll. But the machine part of it, how is it, like the little intricate parts going to, like what are there going to be little levers that they add to it to make everything happen? That remains to be seen. That's what we're watching over the next couple of months. So if you have a question about what it means for you, whether you're buying or selling, or if you're an agent, we're breaking it down every day. Give me a call, 470-233-4409. My email is below if you have questions there. Love to answer them. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Hopefully this brought some kind of value. If it did, if you have questions, drop them below. And there you have it. Hope you all have a great weekend. We'll talk to you. This is Steve. Bye.